Al-Moallem in a press conference, Syria is serious in its decision to take part in Geneva conference because it is a real chance that should not be missed. And Russia is concerned and worried about arming the opposition in Syria because this would only hinder efforts to find a political solution to the crisis. The Lebanese army fully controls the area where the armed groups of al-Salafi entrenched themselves. This is news in English from the Syrian Arab television in Damascus. The Foreign Minister Walid al-Moallem stressed that Syria is serious in its intention to take part in the international Geneva conference because it is a real chance that should not be missed.
In a press conference, al-Moallem said that the plotters on Syria lost their balance after the victories of the Syrian Arab army in al-Qusayr. Therefore, Fabius called for supporting the terrorists. The reaction of the plotters on Syria made us feel the importance of this battle. Al-Moallem added that Syria had never said that it possessed chemical weapons. The opinion polls in the US proved that the American people oppose arming the opposition and using the false claim of Syria's chemical weapons in order to make the American people encourage arming the opposition in Syria. The minister asserted that Syria was committed to investigating the use of chemical weapons in Khan al-Asal because the terrorists did use the nerve gas. The Syrian government has documents proving this and submitted them to the UN and the Russian side. Al-Moallem added that all reports show that the so-called Al-Nusra Front is the basic force in the field in some villages and areas. Parts of the so-called Free Army have joined this terrorist organization. This proves that weapon supplies would go directly to Al-Nusra Front. Whenever the Syrian Arab army gains new victories, the plotters on Syria call for arming the opposition. The decisions in the recent conference in Al-Doha are very dangerous because they aim to prolonging the crisis in Syria and encouraging violence, murder and terrorism. Arming the opposition would only hinder the Geneva conference and kill more Syrian victims. Al-Moallem asserted that the terrorist crimes in Sidon are only the beginning of the dangerous results of Al-Doha conference. However, arming the terrorist plotters of the opposition would never prevail because we are confident of the ability of the Syrian people and army to overcome terrorism. Al-Moallem asserted that Syria would never accept any solution imposed from the outside. The dialogue should be among the Syrians themselves, with the opposition abroad and the national internal opposition. Together we shall build Syria, he added. The minister pointed out that ending terrorism is not only a popular Syrian demand, but it is also a proof of the seriousness of those taking part in the Geneva conference. They have set up obstacles before the conference with their decision to arm the opposition. Syria is ruled only by the Syrian people, who are the most democratic. The minister asserted that Syria has warned from the beginning that events in Syria would have serious implications on the neighboring countries. Syria does not want to interfere in Lebanon's affairs because the Lebanese leaders are more capable of assessing their situation. We hope that the Lebanese army would be victorious. The minister pointed out that Syria aspires to a good relation with Jordan. Syria is in fact defending Lebanon, Jordan and Iraq. The minister asserted that Syria hopes that the sponsors of the Geneva conference, both Moscow and Washington, would prepare the suitable atmosphere for this conference, to build a partnership which would not be confined or restricted. He added that in his visit to Iraq, he witnessed the Iraqi Prime Minister's determination to take all measures to preserve security and to prevent events in Syria from overstepping into Iraq. The minister pointed out that Syria addressed a letter to the UN Security Council about Israel's role in facilitating the smuggling of armed terrorists into Syria and Israel's links with those terrorists in the separation area in the Golan. Al-Moallem pointed out that the supporters of terrorism have no interest in stopping violence in Syria as long as the violence serves Israel. Nobody can control the foreign terrorists in Syria or drive them out. Only the Syrian Arab army can do that. The minister pointed out that not all the Europeans agree on arming the opposition in Syria. In fact, most of them reject that because they are afraid that those terrorists would return to their countries. However, some Europeans have not stopped arming the terrorists since the start of the crisis. The minister asserted that Morsi's decision to cut off relations with Syria was sudden. However, this is left to the Egyptian people. The minister asserted that there were no foreign fighters siding with the Syrian Arab army. The foreign fighters are only on the side of al-Nusra front. Al-Moallem asserted that the Syrians have the full legitimate right to defend themselves against any aggression. If the people want to resist the Israeli enemy, we shall never prevent them. The minister asserted that the Syrian people would never forget Iran's friendly attitude to Syria during the crisis. He pointed out that if we wanted to deliver authority, we would do that in Damascus without going to Geneva. The others are presenting ideas that we reject. The ideas in Geneva would be presented only by the Syrian people. The minister asserted that the Saudis are a basic partner in plotting against Syria behind the curtains.
The Russian foreign minister asserted that arming the opposition would only hinder the efforts to find a speedy political solution to the crisis in Syria. The ministry pointed out the news of increasing the weapons supplies to Syrian opposition from Qatar and Saudi Arabia and the American and French experts training Syrian terrorists in Turkey and Jordan. The Russian statement asserted that the military support of the opposition without any restrictions would only violate the mission of finding a speedy political solution in Syria. The statement also asserted that the Syrian government agreed to take part in Geneva II conference, but some opposition groups refused to agree to take part in this conference without preconditions. The Russian Foreign Ministry said that all parties concerned to stop the violence should work on that immediately in order to reach a political solution on the basis of Geneva communique. Two citizens were killed, one of them a child, and several others were wounded when terrorists fired mortar shells on the areas of al-Abbasiyin and Jalamana in Damascus countryside. A police source said 3 shells fell in the playground, killing 1 citizen and wounding 7 others. The terrorists also fired mortar shells on Jalamana, killing a 12-year-old boy and wounding 4 other citizens, in addition to material damage and properties. The National Information Agency in Lebanon said that the Lebanese army has imposed full control on Abra in Sidon in southern Lebanon after clashes with the armed groups of Ahmad al-Asir. Cardinal Marif Shala Boutros al-Ra'i said that attacks on the Lebanese army are a crime against Lebanon. Those covering up such crimes are accessories to high treason. The Lebanese army lost 16 martyrs in these clashes, while the wounded victims exceeded 50. The number of the dead and wounded of those in the armed groups was not revealed. The road to the EU has become almost closed in front of the Turkish government as a result of Erdogan's internal and external policies. EU sources said that the European Union was on the verge of cancelling a new round of talks on Turkey's joining in a move that would further undermine Ankara's already weak hopes joining the EU very soon. And it would damage its relations with Europe. Germany and the Netherlands are blocking efforts to resume Turkey's bid to join the EU because of Erdogan's government's repression of protests, which have been going on in Turkey for nearly a month. Damascus witnessed a book show organized by the Ministry of Culture in collaboration with the Society of Friends of Damascus under the title Damascus in the Memory. A number of Syrian figures presented their intellectual works mixed with photographs of the historical city. The show was a call to return to the real intellectual and cultural works in Syria. Dr. Afif Bahnasi, chairman of the society, and Amal Muhassin, its secretary, asserted that the show gave a literary chance to Syrians to present their adherence to their historical culture and heritage and pride of their noble history. That was it. More details on the website www.syriaonline.sy and latest in the world of finance in our economic news, but after the break.